Hello and welcome to episode 110 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Joining me on today's episode is the fifth and final guest in my series of Voice Behind the Artist specials, Paul Shipper. When I decided about 6 months ago that I wanted to delve into doing these artist specials and give these amazing artists all across the country the chance to talk, come on the podcast and share their stories, he was easily my first choice, top of my pile, and I've been a fan of his work for about 10 years now. I've got about 5 or 6 of his prints, and honestly, his Jaws work, the work he did for Marvel, his stuff he's done for Empire magazine, and the Thing print are easily some of my favourite pieces out there, so it's an absolute honour to know that he's joining me on today's episode. But in true typical Mark and Me fashion, I like to touch base and talk about my last episode. So on episode 109, I was joined by the incredible actor Richard Brake. This episode blew up. Thanks so much, Richard, for sharing it across your social media channels. To see it on your Instagram and all the response and likes and comments was a dream come true, and it really did help with download. So a massive thank you to Richard, and also a massive thank you to everyone that took the time to listen to this interview. It's easily one of the best I've done. He was such a great guy from start to finish, and I'm a huge fan. So it was an absolute honour to have you on, and thanks again for all that. But let's get back into today's episode. As I said at the start, I'm joined by one of my favourite artists out there, Paul Shipper. This episode is brilliant. I've kept it to the final part of the artist specials for a reason. He is phenomenal from start to finish, and I just can't wait to share this interview with you. So I think the best thing to do now is to get straight to it. Here's me and Paul Shipper talking all things art. Paul, thanks for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
A pleasure. Pleasure to be here. Thanks, Mark.
What I want to do is, for the listeners out there, is take it back right to the beginning. When you were growing up, I want to know at what point it was that you started seeing these iconic film posters. Was it in video, like VHS cassettes, or at the cinema? When was it that you started to take a note of this art?
Well, it would have been around the mid-'80s, I would imagine. I was born in 76, so I think by the time I was about 8 years old, I'd been to the cinema a few times. But saying that though, I mean, it could have been way before. It could have been probably a video shop. That might have been the first place. But the first place that doesn't really stick in my memory that I'm thinking now that I'm thinking about it. But I remember going to the movies and seeing a triple bill or a double bill. I think it was a triple bill. It was Return of the Jedi, Superman 3, or no 4, and Octopussy. Think.
How random are those three to put together?
Yeah, it was my friend's birthday, and his mum worked at a cinema, and so it would have been 1983. I definitely remember seeing the posters and them being important at the time, and you know, they had an impact on me. But it wasn't until later on when I started to see them in video shops that was when I kind of. Because I think with a video shop you were given so much choice, there's so much options, so the artwork on the front made an impact on what you decided you were going to watch.
Yeah.
So that was possibly the place where that may have had the initial impact of the covers are important, the artwork is important. So yeah, it was probably from them, to be honest. And the local video shop where I lived at the time, I remember. 1984 would have been, or 85, whenever the Karate Kid was out on video. I remember whenever I'd be around at my auntie's, she would always take us to the local. You could walk to the video shop from there. And if Karate Kid was available, I'd always rent that. I remember renting that movie. And being very influenced by that film. But yeah, Star Wars, and then Indiana Jones and you name it, Spielberg and George Lucas years, they were the ones that seemed to impact me the most as well growing up. And then the movie posters that went along with those, the artwork that went along with those films were the ones that just seemed to speak to me the most, and the ones that ended up on the bedroom wall as I got older. So yeah, I think one of the earliest posters I remember actually being given, which was a video store that it was for Adventures in Babysitting, the movie.
Right.
And I mean, at this point, I didn't realize it was a painting, to be honest. It was like, it looked like a photo. I just liked it. Something about the image of these kids like climbing up the side of a building by evening. And also, I think I definitely had a bit of a crush on Elizabeth Shue. So that was
Didn't
probably,
everybody in the 80s?
yeah. Um, but yeah, I think that was probably one of the earliest posters I remember. And the video shop people could tell I liked it, and they saved it for me and gave it to me. So I had, that was one of the earliest posters I remember actually having in my bedroom. I think that was an illustrated poster anyway. But yeah,
I mean, I remember going to Blockbuster Video as a kid, and I'd put my name down. You have to be one of the first people when you saw one of the posters in there, and it was like,
yeah,
I'm trying to think what I'd have seen back then, but it was stuff like Kindergarten Cop and these sort of like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
yeah.
And I remember going in and just trying to be the first person to put my name down, so I hope they'd keep it for me. We
Yeah.
just literally talked about when you were growing up and you were going to video shops and seeing those video cases and stuff. When was it? Was it during school that you found yourself, at secondary school, absolutely falling in love with art and being an artist yourself and not just being a fan?
Well, primary school, I was drawing pictures from movies and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, at sort of eight, I mean, if I say 1983, 1984, I think 1984 might have been a key year.
yeah,
So probably age 8 to 10, I was probably when it started, and then started realizing artwork on posters probably a little while after that, sort of early teenage years, and then realizing, oh, these are all done by the same person. And it's a person doing it. Wow, what's that mean? Okay, oh, it's somebody's job. What does that mean? Okay, well, let's look into it. One thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and it's like the hunt for information. And before the internet, it was like, and where I lived in Manchester, there wasn't a lot of information on this kind of subject matter. Everything was in Hollywood, really. But it was like, get as many film magazines as you could, go to the film fairs if they were on. A couple of times a year there was one in Manchester you'd go to, and just start collecting things and finding out things, and then they would sell posters there, and you could start hunting. It's like being inspired by those things and drawing. I was always drawing, and never knew it would really go anywhere and at that time. But I think once I realized that this was somebody's job, and it was a potential, a light bulb moment where it's like, whoa, somebody actually does this for a living, kind of thing. Once you're at that age where you start to understand that people work and do things within their lifetime, it became of interest. I mean, I was interested in other things, mostly music was another thing, and but the opportunities just weren't there. It didn't come up that much for music. It was something that interested me, but it was, if you wanted to draw a picture, it's much easier to get a piece of paper and a pencil than it was to get a musical instrument.
yeah.
And then, as I got older, I'd save up and buy the occasional instrument, like keyboards and things. But art was always there. It was always something I did. It was always something I was reasonably good at, and friends and family would always tell me that they liked something, or whether they were just being polite, whichever way it was, it encouraged me to keep going.
Yeah.
And it just didn't stop, really, and which is great. I mean, I feel very fortunate to have stuck with this and not given up. I think I think if you can put your mind to something and stick with it, you eventually get opportunities to try and prove yourself to people in a way, and I think that's really important to recognize.
So, with your family, when you went to university and decided to study art, were they
Yeah.
supportive? Because some parents were like, I used to love music, and my parents were kind of like, look, you're never going to be a rock star. You're never going to make it as a famous person. We'd rather you do something that you can fall back on, or, that sort of thing. Were they kind of supporting you and seeing that your talent was there and that they could see you could hopefully have a career in it?
Yeah, I remember at one point as kind of, I think I was probably around the time I was at art college. My dad was said to me, he was trying to give me a lesson in, you know, don't, follow your dreams, but he basically said, I think he said something along the lines of, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg are not going to pick up the phone and call you and ask you to work on a movie poster. It's a dream. You need to have something to fall back on. You need something that's, you need to be. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was kind of the advice. Um, it was good advice, but I think if you feel strongly about something, no matter anyone saying anything, it's not going to stop you from giving it as much as you've got. Like I would have just taken it as long as I could, and to a point where it just wasn't happening. But fortunately, it kept going and going. So
Do you think it
I
might
guess
have made you a bit more determined, kind of, with your dad saying that? Because that's something that would make me kind of go, do you know what? My dad's my hero, but I want to prove to him that I can do this. If I've put my neck on the line and I believe in it, like you said a few times on this interview, you believe in something. Was
hmm
that enough for you? Is enough confidence in yourself to think, I'm gonna fucking do this. This is my thing. I don't want to
hmm
go and do a 9 to 5 in an office or go and work in a shop. I want to fucking do what I enjoy and be passionate about it.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you don't know what opportunities are going to be around the corner. So I think and there was many, many, many years of no work, and I had to do other jobs. I had to do other things while still doing this in my spare time.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that, it's always, I was always hopeful and always positive about the idea of it becoming a reality, because I knew there was always a hope that it could be. And I never lost sight of that. But you still have to pay the bills, and you have to do things. So I tried to keep everything as in a creative place as possible. So it was, working graphic design stuff, photography, doing logos. I actually worked for my dad's company for 10 years and I had a room there, and I put a lot of my art equipment in there because my flat didn't have a lot of room. And
Yeah.
I would work all day for them, and then in the evenings I'd work for till the early hours of the morning, drawing and painting, you know, um, on personal projects or film projects that I'd imagined, or whatever was at the cinema at the time. I would just experiment and play, and just, you know, I'd have jobs to do for friends or family. They might want a picture of their dogs or their family, portraits and things. I did Christmas cards every year for friends and family, that kind of stuff. You just kind of keep your hand in and keep practicing, and never let go. That was the key. I didn't want to ever stop doing it. Even if I'd never got any work doing it, I'd still be doing it in my spare time. I think that was and people probably thought I was mental. Just like, why are you working, through the night on things that you're not getting paid for? It was just kind of, a lot of it was just, trying to think of things. I mean, I got drawers full of stuff from, growing up and just doing things, and
Yeah.
just trying to hone the craft, and trying to get to a point where it was really, really working and really singing, so that people could look at it and think, wow, how did that happen? And that was kind of the thing, because I used to look at people's artwork and be, wow, how did they do that? That was one of the things. It was like a magic trick. How did they achieve that? How did they make me feel that way? How did it like give me goosebumps, or how did it make me excited to see something, or why did it do that? Asking
Yeah.
questions was one of the things, like, and then trying to take that information and do something about it from coming from me, and see if I could recreate something similar, or recreate a feeling, or recreate so that someone could get excited about something just by looking at an image. And it did happen, and it did fail. There was times where it worked, sometimes it didn't work, and you learn from your mistakes, and you just keep pushing forward. um
So, at what point was it that it became a reality that it could become your full-time job? Can you remember some of the first big companies that got in contact or that were interested in your work that made you think, okay, this is getting quite serious now. This isn't me just working late at night and hoping, it's becoming actual reality in front of me.
Yeah, it was very sporadic. It was very much like something would come up, and then there'd be nothing for months. It was one of those things.
Yeah.
The sort of work that I worked on, or that I always have done, hasn't always been in vogue, so to speak. It's not always been a wanted thing. I remember it was kind of a niche kind of thing in a way, I suppose. I mean, who knows? Like this time next year, it might be zero work.
Yeah.
but but back when, like, I mean, just around the late 90s, I graduated from university in 1997 from Manchester Metropolitan University, and I did an illustration course there. And during the course, even I was working. Even when I was at college, I was doing the occasional job, like diagrams and things for JCB. Not for JCB directly, but like local firms that use
Yeah.
JCB equipment and things like that. And from diagrams to, when I was at university during the summertime, I'd be working on doing murals in people's homes. Like with scaffolding, and like Michelangelo painting on someone's ceiling with
Yeah.
cherubs, floating around and things like that. But as and that was paid work. It was professional paid work. Um, but one of the things was doing stuff. I did a bunch of illustrations over a course of a few years with GQ magazine, and it was a kind of film related artwork for a writer called A. Gill, who was doing movie reviews at the time. He was known for restaurant stuff, but I think he's kind of like trying out movie reviews at the time. So I did a lot of illustrations for them. And around that time, I'd heard from Penguin Books. I did a bunch of books for them, um, book covers, and things just kind of slowly but surely started to happen. But it wasn't like you couldn't just really drop everything and focus on illustration completely, even at that point. So it was just a case of it was still experimenting at the time. It's still trying to get work. It's still trying to be available for people. I mean, it's not easy.
No.
To put it bluntly, and it takes a long time to. I think being passionate and consistent is one of the key things. And then as time goes by, people recognize what you can do, and they have a bit more confidence in wanting to hire you. And I do advertising in Creative Review, which is a design magazine. I mean, it cost a fortune. I mean, I didn't earn much money, so it was like over a month. I can't remember what the price was. It felt like a lot of money anyway at the time, like
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of pounds for this tiny, tiny little advert. And if you weren't in it every month, there was kind of no point in being in it at all, really. So, but you sort of try everything, and you learn from those mistakes, and then eventually, if you've got something to offer that somebody wants, you'll get work, or they'll be like willing to work with you on something. It's not really rocket science. It's just like perseverance and hope and
Yeah.
belief and having something that you believe in. I mean, there's one thing about being able to create imagery, but you've got to really kind of believe in yourself as much as you can, and be able to, be the best you can be, and just try and shine as much as you can so that people see what you can do. But I don't know what the key to it all is. Just, I don't know.
Obviously, you've worked with lots of different clients, people like Netflix, Disney, Arrow, music bands, stuff like that. I remember when Arrow released a couple of years ago, I think it was now, RoboCop, and I saw that you had done the artwork. And when I picked up the BluRay in HMV, I thought to myself, that looks like Paul's work, without knowing it.
Right.
And I think that's a real big compliment, because
that is a nice compliment.
One of the words you used today was you need to be consistent. And what I like about artists are when they're that consistent, it's their work. And when I see a piece of work, I can usually now, because I buy a lot of stuff from all these, Mondo and people like this, I can recognize the names and start to, like you said, you start thinking, oh, that looks like so-and-so's, and you find out it is, and you see the theme. When did you think you kind of found your kind of mark on the world? Because you have got a style. You kind of have that classic 80s and 90s feel about your posters, but it's still like a modern old school, if that makes sense. It's painted now, but it's always got the classicness about it. It's when you do stuff for The Thing, which is in the 80s for John Carpenter, or you do the Jaws from 70s. Even if you do modern stuff now, like the new Muse album cover, I look at it and know it's all painted in the last few years, but these are films from the 80s, 90s, and an album that's just come out. So I'm trying to work out when you kind of found you, if that makes sense, when you were happy enough with the style that you were doing that made it, oh, this is Paul. Or did you do it without even realizing?
I think I'm still trying to find it, really. I mean, my work, as you can imagine, is heavily inspired by the people that came before me, in particular Drew Struzan and Richard Amsel, and elements of Bob Peak, and it's one of those things that it's an aesthetic that I've kind of, when I work on a project, I kind of know how I want it to feel, like when I'm working on something. So and it makes me feel good when I reach that, and the end result explains that in a way, just by the way it looks. But as far as having my style, I can't necessarily say that it's just my style. I feel like it's a culmination of influences that have, and I think that's, and that's true of many artists, including Drew Struzan and his peers at the time. They probably were inspired by people that came before them, and they used that to kind of as a springboard to find themselves. And I feel like I'm just kind of finding myself, to be honest, through my work, the style wise. I don't think I've quite, I mean, it's nice that you said that, because that means a great deal to me, that it stands out in that way, that the artwork sort of speaks to you, and you can see it and know that it is a throwback, and yet completely of today.
Yeah.
And that's been one of the missions or things I've set myself, is to try and be of the past and yet of the now, and be able to speak to people in the aesthetic that I grew up with, but of today, but still be relevant. And that's so you kind of, by you saying that means whatever I've done what I kind of set out to achieve in that way. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Well, it's the thing, like, if there's, say, the new Fast and Furious film that comes out, you're going to have a big picture of The Rock, Jason Statham, two, I don't know, Lamborghinis or whatever, I'm not a car guy, and a big explosion. That's the poster, and it looks like it's been put together on Photoshop, and it does the thing, but all people care about is the big font, Fast and Furious. You mentioned Drew as an influence, and
Yeah.
when I see one of his posters that he does on Twitter, I'm always zooming in and looking at, the Goonies and the stuff like that. And I do it with you, when you did Jaws, it wasn't just a complete replica of just the classic shark coming up and from the water. You captured Quint looking like Quint, but not just Quint smiling for the camera. From the film, I remember of Quint being a bit of an arsehole, but you love him, but he's a rogue. He's had a bad time
Lovable
in his
rogue.
life. And
Yeah.
you see the nice shiny Brody who's the cop and the chief, and you think to yourself, you captured him during the film, but it doesn't give it away. And you've got that element of Drew art where I want to zoom in and look at it all in the detail and capture it all. And the thought you put into it, and it must be hard because I'm talking to you and it's easy to talk to someone else about you instead of me saying, look, this is Paul. If I'm describing Paul's artwork to someone, it's a lot easier than describing it to you. But I want to look at it more. I want to be, completely drawn in and looking at it for hours and seeing all the different stuff you've done and how you've put it together and why you put that person at that point of the post and not just, oh, that'll do. And the most recent stuff I've seen of yours for when they do, IMAX versions of posters I saw for The Rise of Skywalker and, the special Atmos and all this or whatever Blu-ray it is. I see the different versions you've done. I can look at those posters for 30 minutes, no exaggeration, and look at all the stuff you've done. And I think to myself, the thought you must put in to make it work and all the layers is just, I couldn't even imagine where to start,
Well, that's exactly what I used to do with Drew's posters when I'd have them. If I got something from a movie fair, or as soon as I'd get home, I'd roll them out, I'd get my magnifying glass out, and I'd just start studying them and just being blown away by the amount of effort that's gone into creating this image and how kind of dissecting it and like going how is this even. I was talking to an illustrator friend of mine, James Goodridge, who is a phenomenal artist, and we were talking about Drew because we were both inspired by Drew too.
Yeah.
And I was like, there is a difference. There's something about Drew's work in particular from the time growing up, and he described it really well. And I'm really sorry, James, for stealing this, really, but he said, it's like a miracle. It's like the fact that exists in this world is actually miraculous. It's a miracle. And when you're looking at it, you're like, how? And you just don't know how. You're like, it came from a person. A person did this. And I get so excited about stuff like that. I could go to a modern art museum or gallery or even some of the masters' work and not get excited about it. But something about certain pieces of work that have been created over the last, let's say, 50 years. Some pieces of art, actually probably more in the last 120 years probably, but there are some pieces of art that just defy everything to you. I mean, it's probably different for everybody's different, but for me and for James, and we both agreed, some things just miraculous. It's like a miracle has happened before your eyes, and I think we all, anyone who's been inspired by that is trying to achieve that. Like, I feel like I'm trying to achieve that, and all you can do is do your best. Like, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to do my best with, there's a lot of creativity that goes into a lot of thought, like you said. That Jaws piece, which I'll be honest is not an official piece, but I wish it was. But it was for an art show, and I just remember it was like it was Jaws. You could pretty much do whatever you wanted, and I just remember thinking, well, look, I want to do something like a movie poster, but the Jaws poster, which is one of the most iconic images
ever
you could ever imagine. So how do you? So I did. I spent a long time thinking about that. Like, and there are elements in that poster I think I could have done better, but on the whole, it had the essence of a movie. Which to me, the one of the most beautiful things about that movie is the people that are in it. It's the
Yeah.
people that really make that movie, and so that's why I wanted to show the actors in particular. And yeah, it was just it's like a journey in itself, in a way, to create something from that's not existed before, to look at as much reference material as you can, and know, you have to kind of immerse yourself in the film if you can. Like a lot of new movies, if you get to work on them, you don't always get that opportunity to immerse yourself in the story or the visual, like the actual film itself. So when the nice thing about revisiting an older movie is well, for one thing, you may have already grown up with the film and be intimately aware of it, and what it stands for and who's in it and what their relationships are. But once you have immersed yourself into something, then you can, the idea is to try and create a single image which you can essentially relive the movie through, in a way, as well as being able to sell that to someone, to be like, I'm interested, like I really want to see that, or whatever it might be. But to actually be able to, after the film's been out, to put it on your wall or frame it, or even keep it in a drawer and just look at it now and again, and remind yourself of how you felt when you watched it. We may have talked about this when we first met, but the one thing about a movie poster, it kind of reminds me of listening to a soundtrack of a movie over and over. So when I was growing up, and you couldn't always get access to the films that you wanted to rewatch, or you'd buy the soundtrack and you'd listen to the soundtrack, and you'd kind of remember the film through the soundtrack, through the music. And so for me as well, growing up, having the poster on display, you'd have your favorite movie poster on your wall, and you'd look at it, even just a glance, or like you say, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, even half an hour staring at it, and just remembering that film, that story, those people, those characters. And so, yeah, it's another way of rekindling something, if that makes sense.
Of course. I mean, do you ever put yourself under too much pressure where you think, how am I going to deliver the goods? So one of the posters I bought from you was
all the time.
Yeah, when I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Shout Factory. You did the collector's edition,
Yes.
American Blu-ray release, and
Yeah.
when you think of Drew's one of your idols. When you think of his The Thing poster, it's absolutely in my top 10 of all time films, posters, and everything. To then go and try and put your spin on it when it's been done so well. Is it?
Yeah. No, I mean, initially they asked me to do it, and I kind of said no, because like, how do you expect me to follow up with something?
I mean, I'm like, I don't know if I would just walk away and say, I can't. What's the point? Like,
well, yeah, I mean, I nearly did, and they were really kind, and they were like, no, we really want you to do something. And then after I mean, one thing I did for that was, like, it's a bit like the Jaws poster. I looked to the Jaws poster and it's like, well, what can I do? And the other, I mean, something I can do is people. I love drawing people. So the characters, it's like, well, the original Jaws poster didn't have people on it that, really, apart from a lady swimming. And the same with the Thing one, you had none of those characters' faces. So I just initially thought, well, look, I mean, Kurt Russell with a flamethrower. I mean, you kind of get more iconic than that. And then the ensemble cast around him, really. That was kind of there was nowhere else I could go. I couldn't think. And one of the stipulations I remember was, because I really wanted to have the creature in it. And they were like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, what? Oh, because I was kind of looking forward to doing something kind of different in that way. but one of the stipulations was no, you can't do
It's
that.
just the husky dog. That's all.
Yeah. So that's the closest I could get, is to put
Yeah.
the dog in there. But yeah, that poster that Drew did is incredible. And actually, a few years later, I had a meeting with the guys at Shout Factory. I went for lunch there, and I think it was then that they told me we actually reached out to Drew first, and he turned it down
Wow.
because they were asking him to do something new for the thing, like a reinterpretation. That would have been great to see.
Yeah.
But I guess he just, he decided that he didn't want to do it, and that's totally fine. He's kind of semi-retired now and can pick and choose whatever he likes. But
Yeah.
for me, it was an opportunity, and it was also nerve-wracking because that poster is so iconic, and so yeah, I nearly did not do it, and I was kind of like, part of me was like, you shouldn't be doing it,
So has
But
there been anywhere you've actually just had to kind of flat out say no, I'm not doing it? Like I just can't. I'm not willing to try even. Or have you always thought, do you know what? I like the challenge.
yeah, sometimes, projects do come up where sometimes the subject matter might be not quite to my taste or something like that, and I've tried to get out of something, and then sometimes they've convinced me to just do it. I actually grew up not watching many horror movies and that kind of thing. I was kind of always a bit of a scaredy cat.
Yeah.
I think there was a time when I was a kid, and me and my sister went through some movies that we had and put them in the video cassette player. It was one called Alien, and we were very young, and we got to the point where the chest buster came out, and it's like, oh no, that's not good. It was just too much, and so I think from that point on, I sort of avoided that genre, the horror genre, especially I think because we were like sneaky, like doing it without our mom and dad around, and it was like, we shouldn't be doing this. This is bad. But then as I've got older, I've learned to appreciate the movies of that genre a lot more.
So what's been some of your absolute favorite pieces to work on? I mean, looking at your Spielberg special for Empire, I think looking at the fact you're an 80s kid,
Yeah.
you must have been like, this is a dream come true. You get to, paint and work on these images of probably the films that shaped you to the person you are now.
Well, that's one of the amazing things, actually, the fact that a lot of these projects I grew up with, and I'm now able to do something and put myself back in that place,
Yeah.
of where you grew up from. And the Empire is one of those things. Like I've been an avid collector of Empire magazines since it first came out in 1989, and then I actually met them at Star Wars Celebration in London, and they had a booth there, and I introduced myself, and we got talking, and that's where they. And I don't know how long it was after that initial meeting, but I got to work on an Empire project, and then got to work on a subscriber cover, and then another subscriber cover. And it's like a dream come true.
Yeah.
Honestly, it is. It's like, Empire is one of those projects working on their cover art, and which has been a dream come true, and the subject matters, like that Spielberg issue in particular was really special, and there was a tribute for Carrie Fisher that I did after her passing, which I was honored to have been asked to do. Being a huge fan of Carrie Fisher's work, and especially her portrayal as Princess Leia, which a lot of us grew up with, and she was just a wonderful human being, and very sad that she passed, but honored that I got to do something in her memory, and things like that. It's like you pinch yourself moments for an illustrator who grew up in that time period and now is able to rekindle those loves.
Yeah.
That when you're growing up, you're kind of, people would maybe have made fun of you, like for being into something. Because I was into Star Wars for years and years, and it never went away. And same for Indiana Jones, never went away. But people would be like, "Aren't you getting a bit old for that now?" And it's like, actually, no.
No, I
I
love
never
it
felt
more.
like that. Never felt like that. And so you end up kind of being quite proud of that. And then when you get to work professionally and relive these things that you loved so much growing up, it's a great privilege, great honor. It really is. And I don't take it for granted, not 1 second of it. So I'm really really chuffed to bits to be part of this, revisiting of a past, that is continuing forward. I mean, we're 30 years on, 40 years on, and of that time period, I guess, and it's still exciting as it was, and things are being re-released, and it's great. It's a great time to be a fan.
I obviously saw on your Instagram when you did the Star Wars celebration and stuff, but one of the things I was just like kind of punching the air for you, like fucking get in, is when you got the Last Jedi poster for was it the Dolby special edition poster, and it's the image I always see in my head now. Whenever I think of the Last Jedi, I'm like, that's the poster, that's
right.
That must have been for you a moment where you kind of, am I dreaming? Is this real? Like, if you're a big Star Wars fan, you grew up like anybody in the 70s and 80s loving Star Wars, to be able to draw, like we just mentioned, Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker and these new characters, that must have been one of the most surreal but proudest moments of your. I mean, I'm answering it for you, but is it as good as it should be? Does it feel like,
oh yeah,
this is
of course. I mean, I remember getting the email asking me if I was available, and it was like, whoa, this is what I've been hoping for, something like this, and I've had a lovely relationship with the folks over at Disney in the last few years, and they're great people, and I can only hope that they'll keep giving me some work to do, because it really is. It's kind of mind blowing. It really is, to be able to work on these things and kind of be a part of film history now. Kind of, someone said it to me, and it didn't sink in at the time, but it's sinking in a bit now. But having worked on something for The Last Jedi, and then something for Rise of Skywalker, and they said to, like, you're what did they say? They said it in such a nice way. I can't, but it was very much like, you kind of cemented in film history now, in a way. That you've had a hand in a piece of artwork that is going to be alongside those films.
Yeah, forever.
And it's like, when I think of myself lying down in my bedroom at my parents' house, when it is like a 13, 14-year-old with a magnifying glass, just staring at these posters, wondering how they were even accomplished, to now be actually doing those posters and them getting printed and shipped all around the world at cinemas and stuff. I mean, that's everything I ever want. I used to dream about that, like literal dreams. Go to bed, you dream about working on these things, and I actually have now. And I've said it before. I kind of feel like I've achieved kind of my ultimate goal, but I don't know what is around the corner still. But if God forbid something happened to me and I died tomorrow, I'd be at peace. Yeah. Because what I did was I kind of did exactly what I planned to do, and it's a great feeling to have achieved something that you set your mind to do 30 years prior.
And what you've got to think about is, you were there with your magnifying glass at 13, looking at these posters, working out how they were done, and just like you said, thinking they're masterpieces and it's a miracle and all this.
Yeah.
I'm not just kissing your ass. I've sat there and, like I said, spent half an hour looking at your thing poster and thinking, how the fuck has he done that? How's he done the flame in this way? How's that the center image? But I'm still absolutely no wiser about what happens in the film from the poster. It's not spoiled for me, but I want to know what that guy's doing, and I want to know what McCree's doing. And I'm not the only person in the world, surely, that's done that with one of your posters. So that must be surreal to think. And I'm not 13, I'm 38. That's bad. But there must be people like me in the world that are sitting on your Instagram, zooming in, or buying your poster from your store, or getting the Empire magazine and sitting there like you did with Drew's work. And you said you might, if you died tomorrow, you kind of, I've had the best run I ever could. But you're still doing it. You're not retiring anytime soon. So
no, I don't want to retire or anything.
So what is it? You've got your Star Wars, you've got your Jaws, you've got The Thing, you've got Netflix, you've got Arrow, you've even got an album cover. It's not like you've just stuck to movies. You've had Muse, one of the biggest bands in the world, put your image on their front of their cover, and they are one of the most talented bunch of musicians I've ever seen in my life.
True. Yeah, no, it was good working with them. I mean, I got to do all the internal artwork too. There's a bunch of illustrations inside, and that was a big project. And I mean, I feel very fortunate to have been able to work on all the things I've been able to work on. And I am still working now. I mean, I'm actually painting again. There's painting on my drawing board that I'm in the middle of at the moment.
I can't zoom in enough. I've looked at your drum.
No,
I've seen some.
It's right where the lights are there. That's my drawing. That's my drawing board.
I can't see. I can see Thanos's hand. I can see
up cleverly so it obliterates any image.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm back. I've worked digitally for a number of years as well as working traditionally, and I'm back into working a bit more traditionally again. And it's really nice to be revisiting all the pencils and paints and everything that over the years.
And that's one of the questions I've had all day in my head. I've been thinking, like, where is it at now? Because everything's digital. Everything, is all. I'm not saying that it's forgotten, but you don't. People buy vinyl, but most people are streaming music. If you want to listen to an album now, have you gone on Spotify? I'm like, well, actually, I wouldn't mind getting the CD booklet and reading through it and having that smell of a new CD again and photos and all this. There you go.
There's a record. I did the artwork for Mystery Men, and they've made a record out of it.
How good is that?
Yeah.
And
but yeah,
with art, it's all digital. A lot of stuff now, and I was thinking, does he prefer doing digital? Is it easier? Is it less messy? Or do you still like getting your hands dirty and getting the pencils and pens and paints out and doing it as you learned?
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, it's definitely not as messy. And you don't have to keep buying lots of pencils and paints when you run out. But the digital stuff, I mean, I'm an advocate of digital. To me, it's just another way of creating something. It doesn't mean it's worse or better. It's just another tool,
Yeah.
And I mean, when I was working for GQ and Penguin back in the late 90s, early 2000s, they were like, I didn't necessarily do digital work then, and they asked, can you work digitally? Like, they needed it digitally.
Right.
Now, I could have painted it and scanned it, which I did with a lot of my work. I used to have an A4 scanner, and I would flatbed scan each part of a painting and then piece it all together. But when Penguin Books asked if they wanted it painted digitally, but with the realistic feel of my original work, so I had to do that. And that was, I just went out and bought a copy of a program that I'd seen called Coral Painter,
right?
And a little Wacom tablet, and just did a crash course on myself based on the traditional method that I would do. So I just took the traditional method and did exactly the same thing in a computer in layers. Kind of looked at layers as, like underdrawing, airbrush, and then overdrawing. Kind of as simple as that. And it worked, and they were happy, and they got paid, and it was like, well, this is pretty good.
I could get used to
So
this.
I just carried on. So I've been kind of working traditionally as well as digitally, but the digital work kind of over the last 20 years has been the most work I've done. Like it's just been the way it is, and that's just the way of the world. But I think having that traditional background is a big help, like for sure. Like half my life was working traditionally, and then the rest has been mostly digital.
Yeah.
But having that, that skill is definitely beneficial.
I like the fact
anyone who wants to, I think anyone that wants to be an illustrator, I think if you can learn to draw first, it's a good start. Like, don't just think having a computer will be able to do it. Especially if you need to do likenesses or the specific things that you want to achieve, or methods, or aesthetics that if you've seen it created traditionally, then recreating it digitally is a lot easier to do. So having that basis is a good start.
And something that's going through my mind is when I was doing Skip to the End, for 5 years, I'd review films. So I'd go to the cinema and not really enjoy film anymore, because I was always having that critical mindset of what's the score like? What's the cinematography like? How does the editing look? And I need to score this. So I was kind of never just switching off and enjoying it for just a film. And I found that because I was doing it every other week, I was coming home, and at weekends I put a film on Sky or Netflix, and I was doing the same. I just couldn't ever switch off. And I was thinking to myself today, I wonder if you can just sit there now at home with a cup of tea and just sketch or just draw for fun, or is it now everything is for a purpose?
That's really good. That's true. That is true. I don't. I actually, for some reason, because I've had a lot of projects over the last few years in particular, there hasn't been a lot of time to do anything. And you sort of get out of, I think I kind of got out of the routine of doing that quite some years ago, actually.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where it's like, unless it was for something, I didn't do it. Or, there was things I would do for fun, but like, I doodle. Like, I'd say doodling is still there, and that's whether it's on paper or an iPad with the Apple Pencil. And I enjoy experimenting, like I think I'm more of an experimenter in a way. Like I like technology, so if there's a new drawing app, I'll download it and see what it's like and do a few sketches and play around, and that side of things are always interesting to me. But it's rare now that I'll sit down and do something just for the heck of it from start to finish, unless it's I think I'm so used to people like asking for things that I don't unless I somehow ask myself to do something, it's not going to happen. So a job comes in, you have a deadline, and you have people that you are working with, and you want to make sure they're happy, and you want to be happy with it yourself, and you have these goals, and then once it's done, and then it's usually a long wait until it comes out. And while you're many times I'll be juggling a few projects. So, while I'm waiting to hear back from one client, I'll work on this next thing. And then when I've finished that rough and sent that one off, then I'll have probably heard back from the other people. And then I'll start, it's kind of like a juggling act, which is a nice place to be, I'll say, it really is. But there are some things that I want to achieve, which I've not probably yet achieved, I guess, that are more personal projects, so
Come on, share them with me. What's some of those goals or things that are on the tick list that haven't been ticked off yet? What do you want to? You said you'd be okay if you died tomorrow, but you're not going to die tomorrow.
That's. I mean, I think when I was a kid, there was a specific thing which was to have worked on a Spielberg movie and a Star Wars film or something along those lines,
Yeah.
And so I've ticked that box, and I'm really, really over the moon to have done that. But yeah, there are things. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to die. I never want to get that point wrong. But I've met a lovely person in my life, and she's amazing. And we just moved into a new house last October, which I'm so grateful for that we were able to do before this whole lockdown happened.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for very many things. I have 2 wonderful kids, and life is good. And but yeah, there are things that I would like to do, and maybe. I mean, I don't even want to project it out there. I just want it to. There are things I don't really want to shout about those things or put it into the ether to try and make it become a reality, because I'm not quite ready yet.
And they're very personal to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like deeply personal in a way, but there are things that I want to experience and do with my illustration, with my artwork in the future. But the time isn't ready yet. It's not ready yet for that. One day.
And something I'm curious about is I've put out podcasts and I've listened back, and I'm my own editor. So I edit my own podcasts. I edit all the skip to the end. And sometimes I'm my own worst critic, really. I'll listen back and that's not good enough and that's not right. But eventually you have to just cut the cord and say, well, it's going out. It needs to be released. It's Friday. It has to come out. I've listened back a couple of years later and thought, fucking hell, that was terrible. Like that is nowhere near as what I'm doing now. And I've still got absolutely loads to learn, and I'm nowhere near where I want to be. But have you released art or done projects that you are now not regretting, but you look at and just it's not that you're not even proud, 'cause I'm sure you wouldn't put it out, but you just wish you'd done it completely differently, or it just didn't turn out the way that you envisaged?
There have been times where, when you're working for a client who has a particular vision and you're trying to tap into that vision sometimes. And so you might work on an idea that you just think is the best idea it can be. But sometimes it deviates from that greatly. And so sometimes some options thatVe offered to people have been, I wish they'd have gone down that route, but it didn't always make it. It ended up being, they were happy with it, which is fine. Absolutely, 100%. That's the whole point. But personally, there have been times when I've created something and I thought that would have been a better way to do it. The initial concept that was submitted, in my opinion, it's just my opinion. Like it doesn't mean it's right, but personally, there are a few times when that's happened. Yeah. But ultimately, you're creating a piece of art for a specific purpose, and you have people to please, and those people to please are the people that are paying you to do a job. And it's either, and sometimes your clients need a little bit of persuasion or a bit of insight, and that's happened too, where I've explained something a little bit to them, and then they've come around to an idea. Sometimes that happens, but
because you must have to be quite kind of strict on yourself, because there's a point where it's got to be finished. And
deadlines are your best friend, though, because you can overwork something to the point where it doesn't even resemble what you meant it to be, because you've just. I mean, this is something I say often: is when you're working on a project, you need to step away from it and then take a break and then
Yeah.
come back to it with fresh eyes, and then you start to see it from the it's almost like seeing it for the first time. If you can
Yeah.
somehow do that, that's great, because then you are, you're empathizing with the first people that are going to see it, and you can hopefully put yourself in their shoes and experience it, and then you can make changes as you go. That's kind of one of the things that I have used in my, box of tricks, if you want to call it that. But just to be able to step away and come back with fresh eyes, and then you see things differently. You see, oh my god, how did I do? That's wrong. That
Yeah.
needs to be changed. That doesn't work. And very often you can work so closely on something, and you work for hours and hours and hours, and you get lost in it, and you sit back and you look at it and you realize you just wasted 4 hours because you just got so wrapped up in something that didn't even help. But you just go down a rabbit hole. And that's one.
I'm approaching by the time this goes out, near 100 episodes now of the solo interview podcast, and I've never revealed this, but I'll leave this in on the edit as well. But what I have now done to be so strict on myself is, if I think to myself, I've got a week now to edit Paul's interview, chop it down, I'll put it out on Saturday. By Thursday morning, Friday morning, I haven't even looked at it because I need to be in the right zone.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll put a tweet out or an Instagram comment or a Facebook comment saying, brand new episode out Saturday, which is the biggest kick up my own arse I can ever do. So then I've absolutely thrown myself in front of a huge bus, knowing that I can't then pull out, so that I have to do that. So that's the only way now that I can be that strict, because otherwise I'll just dip in and out, and I'll do an hour and then I'll go and watch something and I'll come back to it and not be as interested as I was, or I'll be really loving it and do all of it in one go. But that's the only way I can work now, and I set myself up to fail, and luckily I never do now, but it works for me.
You set yourself a deadline. See?
Yeah. It's just
those deadlines are really important. I tell you, like, if someone said, we don't need it for 6 months, well, okay, well, it won't get started till the week before you need it, probably.
A question I want to finish on that I ask everybody, and you've answered it throughout this interview, is what advice do you give to anyone that's listening today that's seen on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or anything that you're on the show? So someone, oh wow, I love his art, I want to know, how he got into it, I want to know what inspires him. But what advice do you give for the 13-year-old version of you, the guy that wants to be the next Drew, the one that needs to be the next you? What advice do you give to that guy who's sitting there thinking, I love the artwork for, I don't know, his new favorite TV show. He's into something on Netflix, and he wants to be the person that makes that poster he sees at the cinema. What advice do you give to that guy now, or that girl that wants to become the next big thing through art?
Well, there's everyone, I think it's great to start off. It's great to have a direction in life, no matter what it is you do, whether you want to do like what I do, or whether you want to be a movie director or a composer or whatever it is, whether it's in the entertainment industry or anything else. I think it's a great idea to try and establish what really makes you feel good about, whatever it is. It's something that it transcends everything else, whatever that thing is. For me, it was illustrated movie posters. It was something about it. Can't fully explain it, but it touched me in a way that I knew it was important, and it nothing else made me feel that way. And so I think when you have an epiphany like that, in a way, you have to listen to it. And when you do listen to it, you have to commit to it. And if you want to be successful at something, you need to go in, do your best you can do, be the best person you can be, spend time honing a craft, whatever it is. If it is that, just immerse yourself in it. Never give up. Despite the odds, because you'll never forgive yourself. I think there are many people who have these aspirations to do something that excites them and interests them, and they hit a roadblock and then gave up, and they didn't follow it through, because it was too hard. And it is hard. It's not easy, but if it is something that you feel it inside you, in your gut, or in your soul, or wherever it is, there's something, you feel it and you know it's right, and then you got to stick with it, and do your very best to make it become a reality, because I think that is one of the keys to a happy life on this earth, is to throw yourself into something that you love, and no matter what it is. I think that's one of the keys. So I hope that maybe is good advice to anyone.
I've asked that question to directors, people like Neil Blomkamp. I've asked it to actors. I've asked it to musicians. I've asked it to producers. That answer today is my favourite.
Thank you.
I'm being serious. When I was listening then, I was like, fucking hell, like, that's life, isn't it? If you can do that and you do it well and you capture it and you get that, too many people are ready just to give up.
Yeah.
Or they want to do it, and then they realise how much work's involved, and then they get put off by the fourth or fifth hurdle when there's 10,000 hurdles.
Yeah, it is. And we're all I truly believe we're all, we all have equal opportunity to do what it is you want to do. It's just how committed you are, and how, there are a lot of obstacles through life. And whether it's I could list a lot, but you don't have to. I'm not going to. But everyone's going through their own issues and dilemmas in the world, and living to try and reach an ultimate dream is not an easy thing to do. It's not. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed that little thing, because it came from the heart. Absolutely.
It did. I was watching you talk, and I was thinking to myself, that's the most sincere answer I think I've ever been given. And it's nice just to step back and not be the interviewer for a minute and just listen and think. I think a lot of listeners are going to listen to that and go, whew, yeah, that's it.
Well, that's good. I think it's important to know, and I think you don't know it at the time, but you just do what you can. I mean, you reach forks in the road sometimes, and you will deviate. There will be times where you might deviate, but then something will hopefully get you back on that track. Like working in a job that you don't like, but you can still do your passion in your free time.
Yeah.
Until such time when you can, change tracks and put more effort into that thing that you love doing the most. You still have commitments and things you have to do and you have to achieve, but just try your best to stay on that path, and I hope and pray everyone gets to do what it is that makes them happy. I mean, we're only here for a short time, and if you get that opportunity, then go for it.
I don't want to say much more now. I think that's the perfect ending. Fucking hell, I'm feeling all emotional. I'm going to go ring my mum now and everyone I know and tell them I love them and that I hope I've done them proud.
That's nice.
I really appreciate your time, dude. It's been, honestly, I get asked to do a lot of interviews now because people are promoting films, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with artists. I thought, how am I going to bring this into the mix of bands and producers and directors? And I thought, I'm going to do it. And I'm really fucking glad I did. I absolutely loved today, honestly.
Oh, good.
I really mean it. If I didn't enjoy it, you'd know by my face. I'd be sitting there thinking the whole way through, how the fuck am I going to edit this? How am I going to release this? I can't wait. And I know a lot of people that are big fans of yours, and I think they're going to absolutely love it. So
Oh, that's really nice.
I
I
can't
mean,
thank you enough.
well, thank you. That's really kind. I mean, this it's I'm lucky to be doing this stuff, and it's something that I mean, championed is might not be the right word, but it's something that I've always illustrated movie posters is something that's been really important to me. And when the mid 90s to the early 2000s arrived, and I'm like, well, I'm ready to do this, but the industry definitely is not.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happened. And so I just kind of just kept doing it and doing it anyway, until somebody sees it or somebody's like, oh, check that out, and then a job comes, things like that. It's like if you build it,
happen for a reason as well. Like, I work fucking hard with Mark and me and Skip the End. Like, people don't realize, like, Skip the End used to take me about 12 hours to edit an episode down to 2 hours because it's just coughing, burping, or sniffing, and just I was really, really anal with my editing. And you had to go and watch the film, you had to do a rewatch, you had to do your topic. It's a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
For me, for every 50 guests I ask, you only get 2 or 3. It's getting easier now, but I'll never give up, And last week, I work in recruitment with all things, It's not the job I love. I do it because I get the weekends off. I get to have the evenings free. And then it gives me a chance to do the things I love. And they put me at risk a couple of weeks ago because of the big pandemic. And, they're saying now I've got 45 days to find out if I've got a job. And all I think to myself is, if they take it away from me, do you know what? It's not, oh my God, what am I going to do? I've got the best girlfriend, I've got the best house and family, and I'll be all right. I will do what I need to do. And if it means that then Mark and Me becomes full time and I do everything I can and do it 5 days a week and get it and get endorsements or whatever I need to do, it'll be all right. Everything will be okay. The time and energy I'd waste on stressing on something I have no control over, what's the point?
100% right. I mean, we're all guilty of doing that. We're all guilty of being stressed out through life and everything else, but take a breath, think, it could be worse.
Yeah.
You know what you love. You got lovely people in your life.
Exactly.
There are many things to be thankful for, and the world's a crazy place right now. So find solace in anything that you can, honestly. And if this is something that does it for you, then you're meant to be doing this. You're very good. I mean, I've been interviewed by a few people, and you're very good.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and the absolutely amazing Paul Shipper. As I said at the start of today's episode, easily one of my favourite artists out there. I've been a huge fan of his for many years, so to know he's come on the podcast is an absolute huge honour for me. And to hit it off like that as such a great guest, he's one of those guests that I felt we could have talked to for hours and hours. So let's hope he comes back on the show in the near future to do more and more. Paul's work is absolutely sublime. I love all of his work. Please go and check out his work on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. Let him know you've listened to the podcast, and hey, go and spend some money. It's Christmas coming up and there's some amazing prints out there, and they're not expensive and they're worth every single penny. It's addictive. You'll end up buying 3 or 4 and then running out of space in the house to put them up, but it's a good problem to have. Thank you again, Paul, for coming on the show. It's an absolute honour to have you on. And this concludes my Voice Behind the Artist specials. But I've got some good news. The response to this has been overwhelming. I never expected these to do so well. It was a whole new range of guests for me, and I was testing the water to see if people liked it or not. The truth is, it blew up. Every time I had an artist on, the response was absolutely insane online. So I've agreed to do a whole second part of this. So there'll be 5 new specials with 5 brand new artists coming your way very soon. And I've got some really exciting guests that have just confirmed, so I can't wait to share these with you. In the meantime, please go on markandme.com. It costs nothing to share the episode. Jump on my Twitter, my Facebook, my Instagram, and share this episode. It makes a huge difference and gets loads and loads of more people involved in the podcast. It grows the audience, and like I said, it's the click of a button that makes such a huge difference. All the links to all my social media are on markandme.com, and so is a link to my Patreon page. On there this week, I'm going to be offering some incredible prizes from Paul. He's been so generous. There's some amazing prints and some really cool Star Wars stuff. So hop on in there, sign up for as little as £1 a month. You're going to get about 7 or 8 episodes a month. There's loads of exclusive gifts, loads of prize draws, and all the money that you invest goes right back into the podcast, which allows me to go out there, do more and more interviews, which means more and more episodes for you. I'll be back in a few days' time. It's getting busier and busier here at Mark and Me with a brand new episode. It really is full on, and it's not going to slow down anytime soon. So until then, stay safe, and I'll speak to you all very soon.
Over time, I've been building my castle of love, just for two, though you never knew you were my reason. I've gone much too far for you now to say that I've got to throw my castle away over dreams I have picked out a perfect come true. Though you never knew it was of you I've been dreaming. The Sandman has come from too far away for you to say come back some other day. And though you don't believe that they do come true. For did my dreams come true when I looked at you? And maybe too if you would believe, you too might be overjoyed, overloved over me. Over hearts I have painfully turned every stone, just to find I had found what I've searched to discover. I've come much too far for me now to find the love that I sought can never be mine. And though you don't believe that they do come true. For did my dreams come true when I looked at you? And maybe too if you would believe, you too might be overjoyed,